Good morning. Welcome to week 2 of our virtual learning and going through our Wheelock chapter 22. Last week you got to go through the vocabulary and the sententiae and give that Google Forms vocab quiz a try. Hopefully that went well for everyone because your actual vocab quiz on Google Forms is going to be this week. I'm going to send that out on Thursday for you to go through. And like I said, the super cool thing about that is that it will grade it for you automatically. So you'll know instantly what you got wrong, what you got right, and what the correct answer is. And so that's kind of a fun feature for that. This week, what we're going to do in class for Wheelocks is there are 2 translation readings in here. One is pretty short on 181, a Marshall reading, and then one is a little bit longer, which is a Cicero piece on 182. And then we're actually going to answer those discussion questions, respond to those discussion questions in your notebook. And then when we have our live check-in, I kind of want to hear some of your responses to those, because this is a way that we can really interact with the text that we're translating and not just translate, but really think about what we're translating, reading for comprehension. So I know a lot of times in actual class, when we do these readings, we don't copy them all down. We read out loud, we translate, we discuss. But since we can't quite do that in this format, I am going to have you write them down this time. And so on page 181, take some time here to copy it down. I'll leave it up on the screen for you to check it. You could pause the video and copy it, or you can just copy it straight out of your book. And here's the second one, same thing. You can pause the video and copy it off the screen, or just take a few minutes and copy it out of your book. And then when you're ready, come back to the video. The Latin. And so similar to the way we would do with copying your Ovid pieces and whatnot, you can copy it down all in Latin and then all in English, or you can copy it down in Latin, skipping lines underneath and do the English underneath. Your first piece, your Martial piece, A Visit from the Young Interns, is very short. So you can copy down the Latin, copy the English underneath it. You could do that right now. If you want to pause the video, you can copy it. That way you can be kind of actively doing your work as we're interacting with video, or you can do that at the end of the video. But I'm going to read it for us, and then I'm going to read the description underneath it. And so I want you to follow along with that. So if you want, like I said, to pause and copy and then follow along, you can do that, or you can do it all listening and then after the video go and do the work. So I'm on 181, so I want you guys to follow along with me there, and I'm going to read the Latin and then the piece afterwards. So, A Visit from the Young Interns. Langue bam, sed tu comitatus protinus ad me venisti centum simace discipulis. Centum me tetigere manus aquolion gelatae, non habui fibrem simace, nunc habeo! Exclamation point. So shout that. Nunc habeo! So the description afterwards tells us, or asks us, anyone who has ever visited the health center of a university that has a medical school can fully sympathize with this complaint. If you weren't sick when you got there, you might well be when you left. This is a lot, considering our current time, to be able to read and discuss this idea of traveling sickness. And then it gives us a couple of words. So remember, when we do these pieces, any word that we don't have in our vocabulary thus far, it will give us at the end of the piece to help. And so it tells us languere means to be weak or sick. A derivative of that is languid or languish. Comitatus, comitata, comitatum is an adjective meaning accompanied by. And then Symmachus is the name of this doctor that we're talking about here. A med school professor is Greek, which adds an ethnic slur to the piece, not uncommon in Roman satire. And then centum ... discipuli, so that's in your second line up there, is an ablative of agent, accompanying with comitatus. The preposition was often omitted in poetry. Tetigere, so tetigerunt is a form of tetigere, but it's giving us this alternate ending. So make sure you reference back what tetigere would mean. Aquilo is the north wind. Galetus, galeta, galetum is chilled. And then here it's modifying centum ... manus, telling us gel. And then febris, fever, or and that's where we get the word feverish. So febris, fever. Super fun. And then the discussion questions here, we're not going to write out and discuss in our live chat, but if for your reference, you can look at those if you want to think more about it. At the end of the page, here I'll show you again. Here I'll show you again. You see just an interesting inclusion of this photo of a bronze iron surgical instrument. So that's kind of fun that our author likes to include those fun things to give us some extra context to what we're reading. And then on 182, this is the piece that I want us to really take our time with and really think about and answer those discussion questions. And so again, make sure you're on 182. You can pause and compose it now, or you can do all of your composition of the Latin at the end of the video, whichever works for you. So if you want to pause in right now, pause it here and then pick up later. Otherwise, I'm going to read. So follow along with me on 182 on ambition and literature, both Latin and Greek. Poetae per litteras omnibus magnam perpetuamque famam dare possunt. Multi viri igiter litteras de suis rebus scribi cupiunt. Trahimer omnes studio laudis et multi gloria ducuntur, quae aut in litteris Graecis aut Latinis in veneri potest. Qui autem videt multum fructum gloriae in versibus Latinis, sed non in Graecis, nimium erat. Quod litterae Graecae leguntur in omnibus fere gentibus, sed Latinae in finibus suis contienter. And then underneath, it tells us, review the passage about Alexander the Great from this same speech. So go back in your text actually to chapter 13, and we read a speech about Alexander the Great to give us a little bit of context, because this is actually from the same speech. And recall that that speech was in defense of the Greek poet Archias. And then it gives us this one word, fere, that's at the very end of your story. It tells us that means almost. So we have another word for almost, paine. But fere is another word for almost. And then our questions are questiones, according to Wheelock. So after you have composed your Latin and done your English translation, underneath that in your notebook, I want you to respond to these questions. And again, these are questions we would normally be able to discuss in class, but we're a little bit limited in that right now, and that's okay. We'll have our live chat. We'll be able to discuss it. If by the time we have our live chat on Wednesday, you've already done this, I'll ask you some questions about that. And if not, that's okay too. But we'll get a chance to have some discussion about it if you've already completed this work by Wednesday. So the questions here, though, are: what is Cicero's initial observation regarding the benefits that literature can provide for an ambitious man? How does this compare with the anecdote he relates about Alexander elsewhere in the speech? So that's where you'll have to refer back to that speech from chapter 13. Explain the author's point in comparing the advantages of Greek and Latin literature. Is his position surprising to you? Why or why not? Identify the device of word order seen in both Trahimer omnes, multi decuntur, and leguntur in omnibus fere gentibus, and finibus suis contienter. What is the writer's purpose in employing his arrangement? So sometimes when we're reading these pieces, remember there's poetry or there's prose, and Wheelock wants us to consider why they might be ordering the words in a specific way. What are they trying to emphasize by that word order? And so lastly, just for fun, we get to look at those scripta and paretibus, the writings on the wall. So you see it here, also in your book, but I'll put it up on the screen. So just like in class, when we're looking at these writings on the wall, look closely and see if you can see here composed in the wall what our author is telling us, that it says, Dum virum cucula rogat. Do you see that? I mean, it tells us, this is an example of the hundreds of electoral notices found on the walls of buildings lining the streets of Pompeii. I'm reading this on 182. Rather than graffiti, they were painted, not in size. So this one, instead of being like carved into a wall, was painted onto a wall. So that's kind of cool. So look closely at it and see for yourself the same way we do in class, if you can see written in the wall what our author tells us is there. So that's all for this week as far as our video goes. The last thing to remind you is just keep studying your vocabulary, because Thursday I am going to send out, the same way you did your practice or your trial vocab quiz, I am going to send out your vocab quiz, your actual vocab quiz, through the Google Forms. And so it is going to consist of all 20 words, and it is going to be just like last time, where you need to be very careful of the way that you're typing your spelling, because it's auto graded. And so if you misspell a word, it's going to probably count it wrong. And then also on your verbs, whenever there's a verb, you need to put it in the form of to whatever. So if it was listed ambulo, ambulare, ambulawe, ambulatum, you would answer that to walk as the response. So don't just say walk, put to walk, because that's how I've entered in the answer key. So good luck, keep studying, use Quizlet if it's helpful. If it's not, that's okay too. And enjoy just being able to read these passages and do some writing response to it. I look forward to when we get back together, hearing your responses, hearing how this experience went, and also when we get together on our live chats, hearing how you are engaging with this stuff. So I'll see you guys soon. Have a good week with our second week of distance learning.